Look, you don't really fit the neighborhood. Just step out.
Excuse me, I'm just driving home. Why the stop?
Listen, buddy, that attitude's making me think you're hiding something.
I provided my ID. Please don't touch my door.
I'm not asking now. Get out or I'll assist you.
Call your supervisor. You're making a massive career mistake.
The most dangerous distance in the world is the 6 feet between a biased officer and a citizen who knows their rights. In that small space, careers are destroyed, lives are altered, and the true character of an institution is tested. This wasn't a high-speed pursuit on the interstate or a raid gone wrong. It happened in the mundane quiet of a gas station in Denver, under the hum of sodium lights, where a man who had dedicated 20 years to the law found himself staring down the barrel of its misuse. It was 11:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in the Five Points neighborhood. The air was thin and bitingly cold, typical for late autumn in the Rockies. The convenience store on Juniper Lane was mostly quiet, a lone island of fluorescent light in a block of shadowed warehouses and closed auto shops. Demetrius Baker stood by pump number 4, the nozzle locked into the tank of his dark gray sedan. He was 45 years old, but tonight he felt 60. He rubbed his eyes, the friction warm against his cold skin, trying to massage away the headache that had started around 2 o'clock p.m. and never left. He was dressed in business casual slate gray slacks, a white button-down that had lost its crispness hours ago, and a navy blue windbreaker zipped halfway up. To the casual observer, he looked like a weary insurance adjuster, or perhaps a school principal on his way home from a late board meeting. He wasn't. Demetrius was a commander in the department, the head of the Internal Standards Bureau. He was the man responsible for auditing the very precincts that patrolled these streets. He didn't wear a uniform to work because his job was to look at the department from the outside in. He was known in the halls of administration as the architect because he had personally drafted the de-escalation protocols that were currently pinned to the bulletin boards of every station in the city. He lived by a code of quiet precision. He didn't speed. He didn't cut corners. He kept his registration current to the day. He was a man who believed that authority was a loan from the public, not a property right of the police. He watched the gallons tick up on the digital display, 12.5, 12.6. He was thinking about his son Marcus, who had a debate tournament the next morning. Demetrius had promised to review his opening statement, but here he was pumping gas at midnight, still 20 minutes from home. The peace was shattered by the aggressive growl of an engine. A patrol cruiser, Unit 4-David-2, swerved off the main road and cut sharply into the gas station lot. It didn't roll in slowly. It accelerated, the tires chirping against the concrete as the driver swung the nose of the Interceptor around. The cruiser came to a halt directly behind Demetrius's sedan, angling inward to block any potential exit. Demetrius didn't flinch, but his stomach tightened. He knew that maneuver. It was a pin used for felony stops or high-risk warrants. He looked at the pump. It clicked off. He replaced the nozzle slowly, deliberately, ensuring his movements were smooth. Inside the cruiser, Officer Miles Harrington killed the ignition, but left the overhead takedown lights blazing. They flooded the forecourt with blinding white illumination, washing out the natural shadows. Miles was 24 years old, with a haircut that was too tight and a uniform that was too tailored. He was 6 months off probation and already had a reputation in the precinct for hunting. He didn't patrol, he prowled. To Miles, everyone out past 11 p.m. in this zip code was guilty of something. The only question was finding the statute to match the face. In the passenger seat sat Officer Kincaid, a rookie in his 3rd week of field training. Kincaid was 19, pale and visibly anxious. He was gripping the door handle as if the car were still moving. Miles' dispatch didn't call this, Kincaid said, his voice low. The plate comes back to a generic fleet registration. No warrants. It's a suspicious vehicle, Kincaid. Miles said, his eyes fixed on Demetrius through the windshield. Look at the stance. Look at the location. High-end sedan in a narcotics corridor at midnight. He's waiting for a runner, or he just made a drop. He's pumping gas, Kincaid ventured, looking at the screen of the field laptop. He's literally just buying fuel. That's the cover, Miles said, unbuckling his seatbelt. They buy $5 of gas to loiter for 15 minutes. Watch the hands. Watch the eyes. We're going to shake this tree and see what falls out. I don't have probable cause on my side, Kincaid muttered, reciting the lesson from the academy. I am the probable cause, Miles snapped. Let's go. Demetrius heard the car doors open. He turned slowly, keeping his hands visible at his sides, away from his pockets. He saw the 2 officers approaching. Miles was leading, his hand already resting heavily on the grip of his holstered firearm, his chest puffed out. Kincaid trailed a few steps behind, looking more like a kid who had lost his parents in a mall than a law enforcement officer. Step away from the vehicle, Miles shouted, his voice echoing off the metal canopy. Back up now! Demetrius didn't step back. He stood his ground, feet shoulder-width apart. "Officer, I am fueling my vehicle. Is there a problem?" I said, step away from the car. Miles closed the distance, rapidly entering Demetrius's personal space, a tactical error, but an effective intimidation technique. He stopped 4 feet away, the blinding lights of the cruiser framing him in silhouette. "What are you doing here?" "I'm going home after work," Demetrius said calmly. His voice was steady, the voice of a man who had conducted hundreds of disciplinary hearings. "I stopped for gas." "Where do you work?" Miles demanded, shining his flashlight directly into Demetrius's eyes, despite the area already being floodlit. "I work for the city," Demetrius said, shielding his eyes slightly with a raised hand, but keeping the other hand clearly visible. "I am a municipal employee." "City employee?" Miles scoffed. "Doing what, sanitation, maintenance?" "Administration," Demetrius corrected. "I work in the central office." "Uh-huh," Miles said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "And does the city pay you enough to drive a car like this? Or is this your side hustle money?" Demetrius felt the heat rise in his neck, but he pushed it down. This was the bait. He knew the script. If he got angry, if he raised his voice, Miles would have the excuse he needed to claim non-compliance or disorderly conduct. "The vehicle is registered to me," Demetrius said. "My license is in my back pocket. I am happy to show it to you, but I need to know why I'm being detained. Have I committed a traffic violation? You fit the description of a suspect involved in a disturbance." Miles lied smoothly. It was a phantom call, a generic excuse used to fish for IDs. "What disturbance?" Demetrius asked. "I've been here for 3 minutes. Before that, I was on the highway." "I don't have to explain my investigation to you." Miles stepped closer. "Give me the ID now. I am going to reach for my wallet." Demetrius narrated his actions, a survival habit he had taught to his own son. "It is in my right rear pocket. I am moving slowly." "Just do it," Miles snapped. Demetrius retrieved the wallet and pulled out his driver's license. He handed it to Miles. He did not pull out his badge. Not yet. He wanted to see if the system worked. He wanted to give the officer a chance to do the right thing based on the law, not based on rank. Miles snatched the plastic card. He glanced at it, then looked back at Demetrius. "You live in the suburbs. You're a long way from the quiet streets, Mr. Baker. You looking for a party?" "I told you I am commuting," Demetrius said. "Check the license. Run the tag. You will find nothing." Miles turned to Kincaid, who was standing by the rear bumper of the sedan looking uncomfortable. "Kincaid, run this and check the trunk. I smell marijuana." The air froze. Demetrius looked at Miles, his eyes narrowing. "There is no marijuana smoke, officer. Do not fabricate evidence." "I smell what I smell," Miles said, leaning in. "And that gives me probable cause to search the vehicle. Pop the trunk." Kincaid hesitated. He sniffed the air. He smelled gasoline. He smelled the ozone of the streetlights. He smelled the faint, stale scent of old coffee from the trash can. He did not smell weed. "Miles," Kincaid whispered. I don't smell it." "You got a cold rookie," Miles barked, not taking his eyes off Demetrius. "Check the trunk. That's a direct order." This was the friction point. Kincaid was 19. He had a mortgage on a small condo. He had a student loan. He had a supervisor who wrote his evaluations. If he disobeyed, he was soft. If he obeyed, he was violating the Constitution. He looked at the trunk of the car. He looked at Demetrius. Demetrius spoke directly to the rookie. "Officer Kincaid," he said, reading the name tag. "If you open that trunk without a warrant or genuine probable cause, you are participating in an unlawful search. You are liable. Personally liable." Kincaid froze. His hand hovered over the trunk release button on the key fob Miles had demanded earlier. "Don't listen to him. He's a street lawyer." Miles laughed aggressively. "Open it." I can't do that, Miles," Kincaid stammered. The fear of the man in the windbreaker was suddenly greater than the fear of his training officer. There was something in Demetrius's voice, not anger, but the heavy, crushing weight of certainty. Miles's face turned red. "Fine. I'll do it myself after I secure the suspect." He turned back to Demetrius. "Turn around. Hands on the roof. You're being detained for obstruction." "I am not obstructing," Demetrius said. "I am asserting my rights under the Fourth Amendment. I am not consenting to a search, and I am not under arrest." "You are now." Miles reached for his belt. "Why not just leave?" people might ask. "Why not just get in the car and drive away if you're innocent?" Demetrius knew why. If he turned his back to get in the car, Miles would tackle him. If he started the engine, Miles would claim he was using the vehicle as a weapon. If he drove off radioing for help, the alert would go out, suspect fleeing potentially armed. A PIT maneuver would flip his car on the highway. He was trapped by the very protocols he had written. The only way out was through the center of the storm. Officer Harrington, Demetrius said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice of the commander. I am requesting a supervisor. Immediately. That is your duty under policy. You don't get a supervisor, Miles yelled. You get cuffs. At that exact second, the gas station's PA system crackled to life. A distorted, booming voice announced, Register 2, price check on unleaded. Register 2. The noise was deafening in the empty lot. I am a commander in this department, Demetrius shouted to be heard over the announcement. But the audio distortion was perfect in its cruelty. The PA system drowned out the middle of his sentence. All Miles heard was, I am a static noise. What? Department, Miles sneered. You're a department. You're delusional. Turn around. Miles drew his taser. The yellow plastic weapon leveled at Demetrius's chest. The red laser dot appeared on the zipper of his windbreaker, dancing slightly as Miles's adrenaline spiked. Taser, taser. Miles shouted the ritual warning before deployment. Don't, Kincaid screamed from the side. Demetrius did not move. He did not put his hands up in surrender, nor did he drop them. He kept them frozen in the air, open palms. If you deploy that weapon, Demetrius said, his voice eerily calm amidst the shouting, you will end your career. Look at my face, officer. Look at me. Get on the ground, Miles screamed. He was shaking now. The situation was spiraling. The suspect wasn't fighting, but he wasn't submitting. It broke Miles's mental model. He wanted compliance, and he wasn't getting it. His finger tightened on the trigger. Kincaid. Demetrius didn't look at the rookie, but he barked the name. Call for a supervisor. Emergency assistance, call it now. Kincaid looked at the taser. He saw the red dot. He realized his partner was about to electrocute a man for standing still. Kincaid grabbed his radio microphone. Dispatch 4-David-2, Kincaid's voice cracked. Requesting supervisor to scene urgent. We have a dispute at the Juniper pumps. What are you doing? Miles yelled, momentarily distracted. He's not fighting Miles, Kincaid pleaded. Just wait for the Sarge. Those 10 seconds saved a life. The distraction broke Miles's tunnel vision just enough to prevent him from pulling the trigger immediately. But the weapon stayed leveled. The red dot stayed on Demetrius's chest. You move 1 inch, Miles hissed, and you ride the lightning. Demetrius stood like a statue. He was calculating the arrival time. If Kincaid called it urgent, the watch commander would be running lights and sirens. 2 minutes. He just had to survive 2 minutes. Is your body camera active? Demetrius asked. Yeah, it's recording your resistance, Miles spat. Good, Demetrius said. Ensure the lens is not obstructed. A minute later, the wail of a siren cut through the night. Not a patrol siren, but the heavy dual-tone air horn of an SUV. Tires screeched as a black Ford Explorer tore into the gas station lot, jumping the curb slightly to get position. The door flew open. Sergeant Miller, the watch commander for the sector, stepped out. Miller was a veteran, a man with gray in his mustache, and a belly that showed his years at a desk, but he moved with purpose. Drop it, Miller shouted, seeing the weapon drawn. Everyone stand down. Miles didn't holster. Sarge, he's non-compliant. Refused search. Claimed to be the department. Miller advanced his hand on his own holster, scanning for threats. He saw Kincaid cowering by the fender. He saw Miles with the taser, and then he saw the suspect. Miller stopped. He was 10 feet away. The light hit Demetrius's face. Miller squinted. He blinked. Then the blood drained from his face so fast it looked like he might faint. Commander, Miller whispered. Miles blinked, confused. What? Miller didn't answer Miles. He lunged forward, physically placing his body between Miles's taser and Demetrius. It was a human wall solidarity with the truth blocking the violence. Holster that weapon, Harrington! Miller roared, his voice cracking with sheer panic. Holster it right now! Sarge, I said holster it or I will put you on the ground myself! Miller was screaming now, inches from Miles's face. Miles, stunned by his sergeant's reaction, lowered the taser. He clicked the safety on and shoved it back into the holster. Sarge, I don't get it. Who is this guy? Miller turned to Demetrius. He didn't salute. That would be absurd in the context, but he stood at a rigid position of attention. Commander Baker. Sir, are you injured? Demetrius exhaled. The tension in his chest released, leaving him feeling hollow and shaky. I am not injured, Sergeant, but I am unlawfully detained. No, sir, you are not, Miller said. He turned to Miles. Do you know who you just pulled a taser on? That is the head of the Internal Standards Bureau. That is Commander Baker. Miles looked at Demetrius. He looked at the windbreaker. He looked at the gray sedan. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The city admin comment. The knowledge of policy. The refusal to be bullied. "Oh," Miles whispered. It was a small, pathetic sound. Demetrius walked forward. He was trembling slightly, the adrenaline crash setting in, but his voice was iron. "Officer Harrington," Demetrius said, "you lied about the smell of marijuana. You attempted to coerce a rookie officer into an illegal search. You escalated a non-threat, and you brandished a less lethal weapon without cause." I thought you were," Miles stammered. "You thought I was nobody," Demetrius said. "And that's the problem." Demetrius turned to Miller. "Sergeant, initiate the preservation of evidence protocols. I want his body camera, Kincaid's body camera, and the dash cam hard drive secured immediately. Do not upload them to the cloud server yet. Take physical custody of the cards." "Yes, sir," Miller said. He reached out to Miles. "Harrington, give me the camera." Miles looked down at the black plastic box clipped to his chest. The red light was still blinking. It had seen everything. It was the Anchor A3. The unblinking eye that didn't care about Miles's excuses. "Sarge," Miles pleaded, "I can explain." "Give me the camera," Miller ordered. He ripped it off the Velcro mount himself. The scene didn't end with a handshake. It shifted to the precinct, a sterile building of brick and glass 3 miles away. Demetrius didn't go home. He couldn't. He had to see this through. He sat in the captain's office. The precinct captain, a man named Henderson, had arrived in pajama bottoms and a uniform shirt, looking terrified. "We can handle this quietly, Demetrius," Henderson suggested, pouring coffee. "Suspend him for a week. Retraining." "No," Demetrius said. He placed his phone on the desk. "I want the city attorney on the line. Now." They called the assistant city attorney, Sarah Jenkins. She was put on speakerphone Anchor D1. "This is Jenkins," the voice crackled through the phone. "I've been briefed by Sergeant Miller. Commander, are you pressing charges?" "I am filing a formal administrative complaint for termination," Demetrius said, "and I want a review of every stop Officer Harrington has made in the last 6 months. If he did this to me, he's done it to others." "We have to be careful," Henderson interjected. "The union will fight a termination for a first offense." "It's not a first offense," Demetrius said. "It's just the first time he got caught by someone who knows the rules." "Sarah, what is the liability exposure if we keep him on the street after this footage exists?" "Catastrophic." The attorney's voice on the speaker was clear and cold. "If he touches another citizen, the city is negligent. He has to be pulled. Immediately." That was the backbone. It wasn't just one man getting angry. It was the legal and administrative gears locking into place to crush the misconduct. The investigation was swift but thorough. Kincaid was interviewed separately. The union rep tried to tell him to say he felt threatened. Kincaid looked at the rep, then looked at the photo of Demetrius on the wall of the precinct. "I wasn't threatened," Kincaid said, his voice shaking but clear. "Miles lied. There was no smell. And the guy, the commander, he never moved. He just stood there." Kincaid's statement sealed the coffin. It was the solidarity of truth over the solidarity of the uniform. The outcome was harsh, as it had to be. Miles Harrington was terminated, not allowed to resign, fired. The specific cause cited was lack of candor and use of force violations. In the world of law enforcement, a lack of candor firing is a career death sentence. It marks you as a liar. No other department will touch you because your testimony in court becomes worthless. Miles didn't just lose his job, he lost his profession. Kincaid was not fired. He was placed on a performance improvement plan and sent back to the academy for 2 weeks of intensive training on duty to intervene. He had hesitated, but he had ultimately made the call that saved the situation. He kept his badge, but he wore it differently after that night. Demetrius Baker returned to his office 3 days later. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt exhausted. He sat at his desk looking at the stack of files complaints from citizens that had been dismissed as unsubstantiated because there was no video, no witness, no rank to back them up. He pulled the keyboard closer. He opened a new file. He drafted a new policy, Directive 505, mandatory supervisor response to disputed stops. It required that any time a citizen disputed the legal basis of a stop, a supervisor had to be called no exceptions, no discretion. He called it the Juniper Protocol. 6 months later, Demetrius was back at the same gas station. It was daytime. He was filling up the same gray sedan. A patrol car pulled in. The officer behind the wheel was Kincaid. Kincaid saw Demetrius. He didn't wave. He just nodded a somber, respectful tilt of the head. Demetrius nodded back. The system wasn't perfect. It was still bruised and broken in places, but on that corner in that precinct, the line had been drawn, and it held. The most critical takeaway from this story is the power of the freeze. When facing an aggressive authority figure, the instinct is often to argue or move, but sudden movements are often used to justify force. Notice how the commander stood perfectly still, kept his hands visible, and narrated his actions before taking them. "I am reaching for my wallet." Second, the request for a supervisor is a powerful tool. Even if denied in the moment, it creates a time-stamped record that you sought de-escalation. Third, remember that smelling marijuana or looking nervous are common pretexts used to bypass your Fourth Amendment rights. Politely stating, "I do not consent to a search," is vital, even if they search anyway, as it preserves your legal standing later. Finally, true change only happens when bystanders and junior officers break the silence, proving that loyalty to the truth must outweigh loyalty to the badge. Some elements are selectively fictionalized for education.